If you're a new entrepreneur, I think one of the most important things that you really need to understand is that it is a lot harder than you think, because the entrepreneur thinks of the final product and they can envision it and they say, this is how it's going to be used. And they may be right on the money. They may have done all the research and done a great market report and have a business plan. They could be right on it, but they may not really account for that emotional sweat and the different personnel who come in and out.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening. Welcome back to AI and the Future of Work. Thanks again for making this one of the most downloaded podcasts about the future of work. If you enjoy what we do, please tell a friend. And we'll keep sharing great conversations like the one we have for today. As always, I'm your host, Dan Turchin, CEO of PeopleRain, the AI platform for IT and HR employee service. We learn from AI thought leaders weekly on this show. And of course, the added bonus is you get one AI fun fact each week. Today's fun fact: Angela Watercutter writes in Wired Online that tech disrupted Hollywood and AI almost destroyed it. In the article, she writes that SAG-AFTRA got a deal that protects members from the threat of AI. The fear is that AI will recreate actors, author scripts, and eliminate both from Hollywood. The final deal requires studios to pay for AI-generated content, but it doesn't do much to enforce that provision. My take is that AI generates mediocre content. Great artists will always prevail. Progressive thinkers in entertainment fields should use AI to review or augment their work and enhance their creativity to deliver more compelling content. Expect to see a Hollywood version of this strike drama on the silver screen soon. And as always, we'll link to the full article in today's show notes. Now, shifting to today's conversation, Neil Mandt is a Hollywood entrepreneur, a 5-time Emmy winner, producer of the 20 Golden Globes, a pioneer in AR and VR technology, and a pro sports owner. Since getting his start in Hollywood at age 10, there's almost no award he hasn't received and almost no new form of media he hasn't tested and improved. You know Neil's work from when he produced the daily news coverage of the O.J. Simpson criminal trial. Since then, he's produced more than 3,000 episodes of television shows. Neil's rags to riches story is the stuff of legends. And without further ado, it really is my pleasure to welcome Neil to AI and the Future of Work. Neil, let's get started by having you share a bit more about your illustrious background and how you got into this space.
I got into media when I was very young, as a kid. And I got in because I had this creative passion that I wanted to not sort of follow the traditional rules and have to go push a button someplace. I wanted a lifestyle of freedom where I could be traveling the world on somebody else's dime, producing movies and TV shows. The dream scenario you could live your life is what I wanted. And I said, I'm going to go get that no matter how hard it takes or how hard it is and how long it takes. If I'm hitting any fraction of it, I'm living a dream life. And that's what I set out to do at a very young age. And I'm, some scars along the way for sure, and a few fun stories. But, I'm living on my own terms, which is all you could ever hope for in life.
You have such an eclectic background, from making a documentary about NASCAR to obviously just the many business pursuits, technology pursuits. What is Neil first? Are you an entrepreneur? Are you an executive, a business person, a producer?
Yeah, today I would say an entrepreneur. That word, when I was a kid, was almost like a bad word. He doesn't have a job. He's an entrepreneur, whatever that meant to people. And then somewhere in the last 20-something years, it's been like this really lets everybody be an entrepreneur. I've gone through various creations of businesses in media and non-media, and I've touched a lot of different industries. So I feel that because I don't limit myself any longer to just media, which was what my career was for many years, I would have said I'm a producer, I'm a director for sure. But now I say, I don't know what tomorrow could bring. I don't know who could call me with what kind of idea that would get me excited. And so I'm open to all kinds of stuff, whatever that may be. And that's, I think, at a core what an entrepreneur is, that the person who's open to things.
Absolutely. You're talking to a bunch of first-time entrepreneurs. What's the one thing that they don't teach you in entrepreneur school that you just had to learn from the School of Hard Knocks?
I think the most important thing I didn't, let me think about how to phrase this right. If you're a new entrepreneur, I think one of the most important things that you really need to understand is that it is a lot harder than you think. Because the entrepreneur thinks of the final product and they can envision it and they say, this is how it's going to be used. This is the way the consumer is going to touch it. And they may be right on the money. They may have done all the research and done a great market report and have a business plan. They could be right on it. But they may not really account for that emotional sweat and the different personnel who come in and out. Personnel is a big thing. People aren't prepared for that who are first-time entrepreneurs. And when you get into that personality and then maybe things don't adopt at the right timeline or there's these moments that kind of slow it down, that's where that first-time entrepreneur can be bogged down and they just sort of lose the timeline. So it's harder and it takes longer than you think. So just be prepared for that.
It is such a human pursuit. You're right. And ultimately, the distance between success and failure is often recognizing talent, grooming talent, taking care of your people. And I'm sure you've experienced that a lot. And very rare that a solo entrepreneur will go on to do great things. It always takes a team around you. Has that been your experience?
Yes, of course. I've done like big things where you need big crews. And so I have to understand how to produce the Golden Globes with a huge team of people. I've also had TV shows where there were dozens of people who were on the crew on a regular basis, but then I've also done things where it was just me and a couple of people. So again, I go back to the personnel component. That was one of the things I had to really learn in life was how to really get the best out of everybody else. But yeah, I deal with people that are in groups helping me along the way. There's no way I'd be sitting here talking with you and you say, oh, Neil, you're interesting without all the people who've helped me along the way. I'm here because of them, but I'm also here because I identified the best in them and I'm good at pulling out the best in other people. And that's what we all got to be better at. How do we identify talent in others, pull it out so we all benefit?
Absolutely. That's our legacy as entrepreneurs. And I'm interested in this conversation because you sit right at the intersection of Hollywood and technology. And just in the fun fact, I introduced a little bit of a teaser about some of the things going on with the writer's strike and what may happen with regard to AI. I know you've also been a pioneer in AR and VR technology. Would love to get your perspective on how technology is influencing the future of Hollywood.
Technology is coming at Hollywood like a freight train. And there are so many people who want to ignore it, maybe put it in a box. Again, we talk about these strikes. That's literally what they're saying. Let's put these limitations on things. And what the general public outside of Hollywood understands, but what Hollywood doesn't understand is that people in Hollywood make a small amount of content compared to the rest of the world. YouTube and the cell phone camera, they democratize content for everybody globally. And so now we have this incredible population of content creators. And unfortunately for the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors Guild, they're not unionized. And so we saw this democratization of short form content explode in the last decade because of social media. With the artificial intelligence tools that are now coming online and becoming a reality, they will democratize the long form content. So we'll see a single person in their basement eating Cheetos able to create an entire movie at the level of a Marvel movie. Or you'll see people around the world be able to create multiple TV series in a matter of days just by talking to the AI. So if you're a content creator and you're not thinking about the ways that you could use these AI tools to enhance your career right now, you need to really start thinking about that. And that's what I teach in my course. I have a course, how to make it in the media and entertainment business. And I teach people how to identify that disruption and then how to adjust with it. But I think too many people don't really understand the level of which this is going to move and how fast it is. But the flip side of that is if you're a writer or you're an actor, you could crush it now. You could use these tools to make yourself the star of the movie. You could use these things to direct and produce a movie that as a writer you wouldn't have been able to do before because the limitations Hollywood put on you because of financing, or they had put you in the box. They had said, oh, you're just a writer. You can't be a director and a producer. So there are all these great opportunities that this AI content is going to put forward for people. And I couldn't be more excited. And I also, from my experience, couldn't be more on the front edge of how this is going to work.
As a Hollywood outsider, but a Silicon Valley denizen, I look at what I hear from Fran Drescher, and it sounds, trying to pause the pace of innovation. But as technologists know, that doesn't work. Innovation doesn't stop for anyone. And to your point, technology is coming at Hollywood pretty fast. And, a little bit of soapboxing on my part, but I do believe that the ones who embrace it are the ones who are going to define the next generation of entertainment content. Is that kind of consistent with what you're seeing? Or, do you think there's a role for kind of the old way of doing things to persist?
Things are changing, and you just nailed it when you said that it's going to be the people who use it. The more creative they are inherently, the better language skills they have, the more creative they will be. And will there be a place for an individual painter to paint something in his living room? Of course. There'll be people that want paint on canvas, just like there'll be people who want to go to a movie, although it'll be very rare, and have that cinema experience with other people. These things are going to happen, but the norm is going to be AI in all content and everything we do. So ignoring it would not be wise at this particular moment in time for people who have dreams of bigger things in media. They will be left behind by others. And again, the excitement is they can use it for their benefit.
You mentioned short form media, and I mentioned in your background that you've been a pioneer in AR and VR. What's your vision for the future of the content consumption experience? Is the kind of traditional big release on the big screen, and already obviously we've seen that shift to streaming platforms and home viewing and that sort of thing. Where do you think new technologies like AR and VR are going to transform the consumption experience?
I think the consumption experience for the user is about to undergo a significant transformation, the biggest since the internet and then since the smartphone. You and I were around, as my nephew and niece says, back in the 20th century. And we remember the world without the internet. We remember the change. We remember the world without the cell phones and probably, early days of cable. Certainly for me, I think I'm older, but yes, this has been great change that has happened. But each time we saw a shift like the internet or when we saw the mobile phone, this was a reset. So many people, so many businesses were able to catapult to incredible success. And if you look at the top 20 countries in the world or companies in the world right now, if you look at the top, dozen, 20 companies in the world, you'll see that they're tech companies, right? Tech and media. That's what they're dealing with, is media and tech. They're not dealing with anything else. And so now we're looking at that reset where we're moving from that two-dimensional world we've known on the smartphone and on the TV for whoever's left on that, or the laptop. We're moving from that into a three-dimensional world, augmented reality and virtual reality. And I am of the belief it will be over 90% augmented reality. I think the humanity will change in that we will go from being hunched over to being more upright, looking at people. Now the AI and the AR will come together and they'll make it so I can register your face in your LinkedIn profile next to you. And there'll be information everywhere at the point of contact with my eyeballs. But the most important thing about this, which again goes to the creator economy, where we talk about these people being disrupted by AI now and actors being worried that they can't get a job. That's the old model. The person who worked at a typewriter steno pool in the 70s, that's gone and nobody's crying about them anymore. It's just moved on and it's changed. Because of these AI tools and because it can give the ability for somebody, an individual, to create something, what it will do is it will save time. And AR will save time because you're going to be able to convert to sales quicker because it leaves a memory in the brain from having an experience with the brand or the media. And so that will convert to higher sales, which will convert to a stronger fan base for whatever that content is. So I see that, the whole beginning of the living room content, the new stuff in the living room happening in the next 24 to 48 months. And if you're not on board in 48 months, you're done. As far as I'm concerned, you're done. You're in the wrong place. That would be like discounting the internet. And so for me, it's AR. You got to be thinking about AR.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that that AR first content consumption pattern is going to require, or at least create opportunities for producers and directors and screenwriters to have much more hyper personalized experience, or deliver much more hyper personalized experiences to the audience. What do you think are the new skills that are required when all of a sudden, potentially, every piece of content becomes a choose your own adventure, where it's almost a one-to-one relationship that the producer of the content can have with the consumer? Is that science fiction or is that reality? And if so, what does that mean for the skills that the people producing the content are going to need?
Well, I think you're touching on two items right here. I think one of them is the gamification of the user, and we are continuously being engaged on an interactive basis. And augmented reality and virtual reality will only expand the opportunities of interactivity in what will feel very organic within content. We haven't even seen that happen. And so that's going to, again, convert to sales, and it's going to be more engagement. It'll keep people hooked in the content longer if everything is a choose your own adventure type thing, and can be created in real time using the AI. So you don't even know where, nobody knows where it's going. So I think this growth of the interactivity through gamification in media is going to be one thing that the AI is going to do, a great job at. But looking at the content creator, or not just content, because in my world, it's not just about content. If you're a human being on planet Earth, you need to be making content. You need to be putting an outward message out that explains who you are, so people, when they discover you, they can move quicker, and then it saves time. It's all about time. How many ways can we save time with other people to accept us and to do business with us? But in the content or the other businesses that are being done right now with the AI tools, I can see them having the most important skills. I think the most important skills for people moving forward as AI grows is having the ability to speech, verbalize your ideas, be able to take, a complex idea and simplify it in a way where you can communicate with AI in a way that you tell it what your goals are to then communicate with other people. And so the AI is just the middleman in there that can then give you something different you never thought you could make. Maybe it's a movie poster. Maybe it's an entire movie. Maybe it's just an advertisement at the local rest stop. But either way, you're going to come in on this side with your ideas, and then the AI is going to enhance it. So you need to be coming in with strong verbal skills. That's what I think everyone should be learning, is how to speak and be social, because we're going to become a lot more social when the internet is, on top of our face.
So let's extend that. With great power comes great responsibility. And all of a sudden, when a creator using their voice or using simple text prompts can generate anything, might be true, might be untrue, might use copyrighted content, license, the likeness of other people in unauthorized ways. How do you think about the ethics of AI, given how easy it will increasingly become to, other people's likenesses or other people's content?
I think you're talking about two different things that are intertwined, which is obviously with ethics. There are many things that are intertwined in ethics, but you have two kind of very big things. One is, how do we deal with ethics in AI when it comes to other copywritten material? That's one question. And then the other question is, what will happen as a result of the AI using copyright-written materials? Because it's going to do that component. We are not going to be able to stop it. And so I hear people with these conversations of, how can we contain it? How can we put like a watermark on it? You cannot, because the AI is going to be that good that it's going to be able to go past it. And so maybe for short periods of time, we can put little guardrails in. But at the end of the day, when it comes to content and deepfakes, the deepfakes in that content and utilizing other people's material to train these large language models that are being used for the AI, that has sailed. Because we don't have to deal with it even in the United States. There's a lot of countries around the world that don't follow our rules. And these things can be baked into the internet. So we just have to realize that this stuff's going to happen and it's going to be bad. And then we have to think about, how are we going to behave in this economy? How will I use the way I was raised and my understanding of ethics to, as a creator, how will I communicate with other people and say, look, this is a creative thing that I'm using this tool to do this. And I believe this is entirely ethical, or I'm not doing this because I think this would cross whatever that boundary is, because I would clearly be utilizing somebody else's IP. And I think in the middle of there is life education and the way you were raised by your parents and the way you've worked in business today. But bad people will do bad things. And I think we have to accept that.
We're entering an important election season, just as one example, but where every one of us is going to be bombarded by a lot of half-truths, things that are just blatantly fake, some things that are real, and we're going to be left to make decisions about, who created it and whether or not we should believe it, and is it manipulating, how I think. Just would love to get your perspective, as both a consumer, but also as a creator who's on the front lines of, how some of this is being generated. What's your advice to consumers who just are not going to know anymore what is true?
While I am concerned greatly about the political nature of our world and how media is dispersed across the internet, it has had incredibly negative impacts in so many ways. And right now, as we're just entering into this AI phase of content creation, the public at large is not sophisticated enough to understand this. They just aren't. And I'll tell you an example again, in a positive way. I have this course that I'm selling to people to learn more about the media and entertainment business. And there is an AI tool now that I can take the 13-hour, 144 episode course, and I can put it into the AI generator, and it will spit it out with me speaking in Hindi or Arabic and Spanish, and not just dubbed, but my mouth would have been morphed digitally through the AI to give the impression as though I am a native speaker. So again, on a business front, that opportunity has never happened. Same with you for your content. You could obviously have it dubbed immediately and you could reach a global audience. But the bad actors who will use these things for bad purposes are going to have a greater microphone. And, my concern, and I'm a serious free speech guy. I've been a journalist my whole career. I've been made content, all of this, and I care about people's ability to be creative. But I don't like the fact that any social media platform can let people yell fire and nobody says anything about it. That doesn't feel right to me. And I feel like controls need to be added within those platforms that are able to message to many people. I think that has to be reined in. And I don't care what the past was. Oh, we got away with this in the past. It's irrelevant. We're in a new future, and these leaders need to step up to the moment. And they've already been to events like the White House and other groups, and they're like, oh, we're going to work to save this. Well, how about set some real parameters on your platform? And don't talk to me about coding you're going to do. Talk about the defense that you're going to put up against this. And I haven't heard that. And that's where I want to get some answers, is out of the big boys who are controlling those platforms.
So far, the approach of big tech grading its own homework is not working.
No, it's ridiculous.
It's a downward spiral. And so we do need to put some guardrails in place and understand that there will always be capitalists who exploit the ability to monetize this unauthorized content. So
yeah,
I agree with you. It's hard to have this conversation about the encroachment of AI on traditional work patterns, whether it's Hollywood or really any industry, without talking about impact on jobs. What's your perspective on specific to Hollywood, and maybe thinking about some of the teams that you've hired, or, like you mentioned, a big team to produce the Golden Globes? Where are there legitimate threats that AI poses to jobs? And then what are maybe some other careers or roles or jobs that the availability of AI technologies will create?
Yeah, that's the big question for me, is the displacement of workers. Because again, as I give you answers to these questions, I'm giving you my answers based on my life education, my business education, my feeling based on touching this content. And I think it's going to be bad news for Hollywood in a big way. I think it's a good news for the independent content creator. I think this is the greatest day ever. But I think if you play in the traditional system, just like the person that was the typewriter in the steno pool, I think you're going to be impacted. And if then you go with my belief that an actor, which is the belief of the Screen Actors Guild, can in fact be scanned and turned into some sort of a character, which is a past tense thing, has already happened. If you go along with that belief and then you say, okay, this would then lead to limited amounts of shoots for the actor. Okay, that's bad, but they could negotiate a higher rate. But my concern is about the truck driver and the craft service person and the assistant camera person and the camera person, and then the lack of editors because of the lack of footage. It's everybody else that gets impacted. And if you're not shooting 10 weeks, you have all those people that are employed for 10 weeks. And so that's where I'm staying up at night, because I believe the actors are going to be disrupted. So that means I believe that all of these people will be disrupted. And I think it will be horrific. I think it's going to be, because not everybody is going to be, okay, I'm going to use these tools to become a creator. That's going to be, again, while it's going to be a lot globally, it's still going to be a smaller amount of people that are going to fall into that funnel of becoming creators, becoming entrepreneurs, because you're doing that on spec, like you had to do YouTube, and then succeeding. And so where do all these displaced people go? I don't know.
I'm an AI optimist, like I believe you are. And you mentioned a couple times how it's going to these tools democratize access to being everybody. No, this is an exaggeration, I understand, but everybody can produce Scorsese quality content, not literally, but really high quality content. Maybe it's short form, but that ability for everyone to become a creator and produce great content, to me, opens up the world of entertainment rather than shuts it down, even though you might be able to produce the same quality or edit the same quality of content in half the time. I see it as a good thing when the other half of the time not spent editing could be spent using these tools to create better content. Is that Pollyanna-ish?
No, I agree with you. I think you're right on the money. It's just how many people will then take that to that level. And I think there'll be, like we saw with people around the world creating short form content, you'll see everybody who's not in the unions creating this content. And then the next union negotiation in 3 years, you would have had multiple years of people around the world creating long form content using AI, and the efficiency of it will not be up for debate at that point, because we will have endless examples of it. In 3 years, it will have taken hold. And so at that point, it's going to be very hard for the different parties in Hollywood to have that negotiation on an older business model, because it will be too expensive.
Neil, I got to get you off the hot seat, but you're not going anywhere without answering one last question for me. Over the many years of your career, you've managed, interacted with, become friends with a lot of celebrities. Tell our audience one story that might surprise them about an interaction you had with a celebrity.
With a celebrity. Okay, let's think here. It's interesting. I'm not friends with a lot of celebrities. I've interacted with countless of them over my career, like everybody, but for whatever reason, I'm just not. They're their world, the celebrity world. I'm just a guy, does his work and lives a pretty basic life.
Anyone do anything shocking at the Golden Globes?
No, but I will say, I do have I got a few stories, but here's a good one. So I was producing a lot of sports television shows between 2000 and roughly 2000, and even today, actually, I still have a sports TV show in there. So I've always had a lot of shows on ESPN or Fox Sports, and my brother and I have done a lot of work together in that world. And so somebody asked me if I could take a meeting with a guy who was pitching an MMA league, and he wanted to take it to Fox Sports. So I took him in there, and the pitch, was fine, but they didn't buy the show. And so the two of us were hanging out in the parking lot, and he's asking me about producing and directing. And I said, is this something that I do? And I said, of course. And he asked me, he said, could you direct a Turkish television show in Turkish? And I said, sure, if I understood the language. So it was somebody who gave me an episode of it before that I could look at. And I got a truck backing up outside. So I looked at some episodes. I was like, yeah, I can do this. And then the guy says, could you get Andy Garcia and Sharon Stone to star in this Turkish television show? And I said, no, of course not. And then he said, what if I put a certain amount of money in their bank? And it was an enormous number, like a crazy number. And I was like, yeah, I could totally get them. That money in the bank, and we'll get them. And it's going to be 1 day shoot for 8 hours. And so it all goes through. And then Sharon Stone and Andy Garcia are shooting this television show in Turkish, and it was the most popular show in Turkey. And in the episode, Sharon meets this guy who's like their, super underground, like CIA type guy from Turkey. And we find out that Sharon and Andy Garcia's are the leaders of the underground mob, the people who run the world. They're the leaders. And they're like, imagine this guy from Turkey shows up in Beverly Hills and there's Sharon Stone. And people in Turkey went bananas because Sharon kissed the guy on the cheek. And I was told that 90% of the people that had a TV on in Turkey on that night watched that episode. And to this day, it's the most watched in Turkey. And that's how I met Sharon Stone. It was on a Turkish television show.
It's going on your epitaph. That story right there. That's a good one.
It was a good one. Yeah.
I told you, that was the last question, but all right, I got to get in one last one. So rumor has it that back when I was a huge Run DMC fan in the 80s, you just might have opened for them.
I did.
What in the world? How did that come about? You're just a kid at the time.
First of all, it's important to understand the time. So this is May of 1984. Run DMC, their first album had just come out like weeks earlier. They haven't even started their full tour yet. And they're doing a couple of select dates, and they were doing a date in Detroit at the Fox Theater. And this is a very famous theater in Detroit, and a big crowd, like 7,000 people were there. And they had a citywide audition for the opening act, and they picked a couple of breakdancing crews, and my crew got selected. And so I remember being on that stage, with this big crowd as a 14-year-old. It was quite something.
Unbelievable.
I was hustling as a kid. I was managing this breakdancing troupe at 14, and there were guys in their 20s that were in it. And I got us to open for Run DMC. I got us on TV shows. And it was because at a young age, I said, I can make things happen. Don't be afraid. Pick up the phone, call people. And it works.
We talk about hustling as a high-tech entrepreneur, which usually refers to, how we pitch venture capitalists or take tech products to market. But everyone listening who's an entrepreneur, that's another flavor of hustle. That's an amazing story, Neil.
It needs to be the same flavor. There's too many people that are afraid to get scars. You got to put yourself out there and be willing to get stabbed. And that's when you're really in the game.
That's the great Neil Mandt. Hey, Neil, before I can let you go, where can the audience learn more about you and your good work?
My website is the best place to go. It's my name, neilmandt.com. And Neil is Neil, Mandt is Mandt. And I have this course, How to Make It in Media and Entertainment. And it's really not just for people who are thinking about being in the content space. It's about anybody who wants to survive the next decade, because we should never discount the way media impacts all aspects of business. And technology now is total with media. And I talk about the challenges I overcame in business and the things I did not overcome and what I've learned from these things. And it's 144 videos, it's 13 hours, there's some quizzes. It's good for anybody who's looking to take things to the next level or really just get started.
Go take the course, everyone. Learn from the master. Neil, it feels like we're just getting started. Maybe you'll come back another time and we'll continue the discussion.
I hope I get a second shot at this.
This is a pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Well, gosh, that's all the time we have for this week on AI and the future of work. As always, I'm your host, Dan Turchin from People Rain. And of course, we're back next week with another fascinating guest.